As noted, yes, Councilor Russ Quay could not make it tonight due to illness. So we're going to call the meeting to order. Public input, maximum 30 minutes. Public input that we talked about has been moved from the beginning of the meeting. And until we change our procedural bylaw, this will always be coming up at the beginning of each meeting. So one of the things I wanted to say in regards to the public input is I would like to see us revisit in the future the opportunity to bring back input at the beginning. Once we go back to public meetings, and if we find that we don't have an issue with it getting out of hand, I think it might be a good idea to revisit it at that time and bring it back to our meetings. What do you guys think?
I think it would be good to revisit it.
Tom?
I thought it worked quite well when it was at the end, but I think if the structure is stuck to, which as I understand is that the input at the beginning is supposed to be specific to items that are going to be addressed. I could have that wrong.
That's incorrect. Yeah, it's the items at the beginning, the public meeting at the beginning was an open question period. You could only discuss the agenda at the end of the meeting.
Okay, so I have it reversed. Okay.
So what do you think about revisiting it?
It doesn't hurt to revisit anything. So sure.
Okay, Norm?
I'm willing to revisit it. I kind of like it the way it is, but we can revisit it.
Okay, Anne, what do you think? Anne? Okay, well, we'll find that out later. Okay, so introduction of late items. Do we have late items to be introduced? Anne, I'm sorry, we don't have any audio on you at all.
We're just in the middle of a meeting.
Do you have it now?
Yes.
There you are.
Now? Yes?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll leave the headphones off because I can't really hear you very well without them though. So.
Okay. So regarding the introduction of late items, do we have late items?
Are you asking me?
Yes.
Mayor? Yes. Mayor, we had 3 letters submitted that were provided to council for discussion at tonight's meeting, which could be considered as late items.
Okay.
Or could be considered under the correspondence, but they were received after the agenda was posted, and
Okay,
council
so
has those letters.
and we can move those to correspondence, is that correct?
We could do that.
Could we add flooding on McMillan Drive for on January 3rd? Is there any information to talk about on that?
There is an update.
Okay.
So we could address that as well
Okay.
at that time. Are you okay with that, Anne?
Yes.
Or I'm supposed to say CAO, sorry.
I'm sorry, Mayor. I'm having a little trouble hearing. If I put my headphones on, you can't hear me, but I can hear all of you. And so I wonder if I could please ask you to turn up your volumes on your machine. So if I put my headphones on, I can hear you perfectly, but for some reason then you can't hear me at all. So.
Okay, my volume is up. Can you hear me better now, Anne?
Wow.
You can hear me. Because you're plugging them into your laptop. I don't have anywhere else to plug them. No, I don't have a hard drive. This is the hard drive.
We'll address.
We'll struggle through.
Yes.
For Councillor Polson, we will address that right after the correspondence as well.
Okay.
An update on the McMillan flooding.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. So approval of the agenda. Recommended resolution that the agenda for the regular meeting of council January 5th be adopted.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Minutes of the previous meeting. Recommended resolution that the minutes of the regular council meeting held on December 15th, 2020 be adopted. Do we have discussion on that? Do we have a first?
First,
Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Sorry, Norm, we've lost your volume as well.
Have you really?
There you go. Now you're back.
I didn't say anything.
Sorry, I saw your lips moving. I thought you were talking. Okay, so petitions and delegations. There isn't any. Okay, so now we're going to go into correspondence. So did everybody had a chance to review the correspondence on hand from the UBCM?
yes,
Congratulating, it's excellent. We got $5,400 grant, 100% of the grant. So excellent work to the staff. Thank you.
yes,
Yeah, thank you.
yes.
The AVICC, the call for resolutions by February 26th. Everybody had a chance to review that information as well?
Yes.
Yes.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. Now, we were going to, under correspondence, did we want to talk about those 3 letters? Anne?
Mayor Baker, we received, after the proposal, after the agenda was posted, we received 2 letters from citizens, which one of them dated back to July. It was reiteration of a number of concerns. And the second one was from another citizen relating to a number of similar concerns related to things like development cost charges, the fireworks bylaw. Well, you've got the letter. There's a number of concerns that are ranging from a number of issues and require staff to provide some background for council, and would suggest that we review the matter and provide some background for a response from mayor and council.
Okay, so what we're going to probably end up doing there is respond in writing and have that be signed off on it. Is that correct, Anne?
Correct. I'll prepare a response and circulate it for additional comments from council, and it'll be ready for signature, early next week.
Perfect. Everybody's good with that?
Yes.
Yes.
So what I want to commend Anne on, or pardon me, CAO, is the fact that the questions are being answered and they're being answered factually with fact check being done. So and there's already been some praise in the community from that. So thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Yes, thank you, Anne.
Mayor, sorry, one thing. What the third letter related to the 3 resolutions that were proposed by Councillor Craig. So a separate issue on the third letter.
Okay, we can look at that letter. I think we should look at that on the next meeting because we're going to move Councillor Craig, because he can't be here today. We're going to move him till the next meeting. So I think we should look at that letter at the same time. Everybody agree with that?
Yes.
I do.
Okay. I think it's very important for Wes to be here to speak on his behalf regarding these 3 resolutions to AVICC. So
Yeah, it'd be nice to have them respond to them.
I agree.
do
So
you-
now we're going to,
do you
sorry,
need a motion? Do you need a motion to
move it.
receive them and move them to the next meeting?
That's a good question.
Well, we haven't quite got to that. We're still in correspondence, aren't we?
I may have missed that. Sorry, my fault. So under correspondence, it's
Sorry,
all
we're
with the,
petitions and delegations and correspondence, so we haven't quite got to, we're now at.
I'm sorry. Okay, so I need a resolution to accept the correspondence.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
second,
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I missed that. And now we're going to go to the 2020 CEPF. Is that correct? Emergency Support Services, Sayward Modernization of the ESS Communication Capacity Enhancement from December. We already talked about that, and that's that $5,400. So recommended resolution is that the Community Emergency Prepared Fund correspondence from UBCM, dated December 24th be received.
So moved.
I second it.
Mhm. Sorry about that, CAO. Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities 2021 call for resolution for the February 26th deadline. Do I have a first?
So moved.
And a second. Okay. And that the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities 2021 call for resolution be received. Do I have a first?
I move it.
A second?
second.
Okay, at any point, if I miss anything, please interrupt. Okay, it looks like the next point is on council reports. Council reports. Does everybody have anything to report on? I imagine there wasn't very much committee action over the holidays.
No, I have nothing to report.
I have nothing.
I have nothing.
Okay, I'll get to when I get into the mayor part here. I'll talk about my meeting with the RCMP and something related to the fish farms. So next was going to be Councillor Craig, pardon me. His 3 resolutions of to AVICC. So do we need a motion to move those to the next meeting, CAO?
Yes. we do.
Yes? Okay, so we move to, the motion is to have those moved to the 19th, I believe it is, for January 19th meeting. All in favor?
I,
First and second?
Oh,
Second? Any discussion? No? Okay. We have no reports on committees. That's where that should have came in. On just about 10 days ago, I had a meeting with the RCMP. And what they're going to be doing is coming to us either through Teams on the next meeting or in person quarterly to give a report on what's been happening in our community. He did state that over pretty much 90% of the work that they do is highway related, but he is going to bring a report to us, pardon me, on the 19th. Also, I was contacted earlier yesterday to be involved in a conference call, well, a Zoom meeting with 4 other mayors from North Island. And it's regarding the closure of the fish farms to Discovery Island. There's another call tomorrow that I have to be on. And it's with the Minister Babcock, I believe her name is.
Yes.
Yes. So there is one tomorrow with the 5 mayors talking about the closure, the fact that it was done without any consultation with any of the local mayors or communities, and the impact that it's going to have in terms of economics and employment, right? So Councilwoman Polson and I were in discussion just prior to the meeting because all this came up rather suddenly. And she's going to be giving me some information on how that directly affects Sayward Futures, our dock, and the kind of dollars that it brings into our community. So once we have the meeting tomorrow on the 19th, I'll get you up to speed, or any additional correspondence, I'll make sure that I CC you. Now, another thing that I would like to say is I wanted to thank Norm. What happened with the whole situation here in our governments and the resignations and so on and so forth? You know, to hang in there at a very ugly point in history in our community is, you know, it should be definitely something that there's gratitude for. And I just wanted to thank you, Norm, for that. And I wanted to do it publicly.
Thank you.
And I also wanted to thank John France for the work that he did in conversation with Norm during the last meeting. What John France walked into and the work that had to be done, and which made the transition from going from John France to Ann McDonald as our new CEO much smoother. And it was greatly appreciated. So I wanted to recognize that as well.
Yes.
Does anybody have any comments regarding that? No? Okay.
From my point of view, same thank you to both of you.
Yes, I agree.
Absolutely.
Well-
It was a very difficult time, and Anne has come in and taken the reins and getting a great start on things, and it's really appreciated. And thanks to you, Norm, too, for as acting mayor, for hiring John on a temporary basis. It's worked out for the benefit of Sayward, and that's what we were looking for with this by-election, was
Yes.
moving forward and working for the residents in Sayward. And you've both done a great job, and will continue, I hope.
It will. I'm pretty confident that it will. Okay, so any unfinished business? Okay, so now we're going to go into staff reports. So I'm going to turn that over to Anne.
Thank you, Mayor Baker. The first staff report relates to the contract award for the Salmon and the White River flood hazard mapping. The Village of Sayward received some funding from the province UBCM Community Emergency Preparedness Fund of $150,000 to do this work. There was an RFP issued in October. We received 4 proposals. Councillor Craig, Sean Koopman, who is the Emergency Procedures Coordinator from the SRD, and myself evaluated the 4 proposals using the criteria that was included in the RFP. It was basically team, methodology, and some other criteria related to their demonstrated ability to provide the service, and then some value-added components, which in fact is what put McElhaney, the proposed award contract, over the top in terms of what they were offering, which is public education and some review of our bylaws and a bit of a presentation, which will be really helpful to residents of Sayward to understand and appreciate some of the mitigative measures that the village might be taking over the next few years once we have a bit more current data on the the flood risks, and identifying a bit of the floodplain using more modern mapping techniques, which weren't available in 1980 when the original mapping was done. So it should be very helpful, and it'll be a really excellent way for us to get started on the official community plan review, which has also been funded recently and ready to go. So it'll be a great baseline mapping for future development in the whole valley. So what staff are recommending is that the report be received by council, and that council approve entering into the contract with McElhaney to complete the Salmon and White River flood hazard mapping in accordance with the proposal that they submitted in November.
So the recommended resolution is that council receive the Salmon and White River flood mapping report, and that council enter the contract for $157,479 in accordance with the proposal submitted by the Village of Sayward dated November 26, 2020. All in favor?
I,
Do we have a first? I
I'll
know
be
I'm doing
first.
this a little differently. Do we have a second?
second.
And it's all in favor. Okay, sorry about that. Okay, staff report number 2. The Canada British Columbia Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program, COVID-19, Resilience Infrastructure Stream, Grant Application and Proposal Investment.
Thank you. This again is another application for grant funding that's related to resilience infrastructure. It includes retrofits, repairs, upgrades, physical distancing measures, active transportation, and disaster mitigation. So basically this relates, the funding that you see listed in the table 1 chart that accompanies this staff report links back to gear that staff is recommending be purchased with this grant money should we be successful. Right now, the Village of Sayward operates the primary treatment sewage lagoon, which, you know, I'm sure everybody's familiar with, frequently, and that's at least often very, very frequently monthly. Public Works staff are required to enter the lagoon by way of a rowboat to remove debris that ends up roping itself around the rotary shaft of the aerator, and that causes it to dysfunction or malfunction. Now staff are kind of working their way into this rowboat and into the pond. It's extremely hazardous. There's no dock. They're not properly covered. There's quite a lot of, it's basically raw sewage in the pond that gets settled out and then taken away. It's obviously quite diluted with the tidal water coming in. However, should staff fall in or drop a tool and there's a splash, there could be contact with, you know, any range of bacteria that would be present in the pond, including COVID. So what we're proposing is a series of expenditures to protect the safety of staff, hazmat suits, which can be washed and dried and, you know, have a long life if they're properly looked after. They're basically a polycarbonate with a hood window and very good visibility, light enough for staff to be able to move around in the boat and also be able to, you know, carry out the work they're intended to do. Rubber boots, gloves, and then also construction of a proper boat dock for access and egress from the pond. Really, I talked to WorkSafe BC to see if they had some recommendations for specific gear, and they were quite keen to point out to us our obligations to provide for staff when they're carrying out their duties. And so hopefully we will get the funding for this, but should we not be successful, I would recommend that it be a very high priority from some other source of funding, and that we continue to seek a way to provide for the safety of staff in carrying out this work monthly. So basically we're talking about just under $13,000 to cover off this equipment.
And that's a dock too?
That's the dock
Yes.
too. The dock we've estimated about 10,000. So you know, we have a bit of work to do to try and, you know, define that a bit, but our public works person Tony has been working on that, and we should have some we'll be well within our budget at 10,000.
Thank you.
Any questions?
I have a few comments. As I read through this, I was absolutely horrified that the public works were going in a rowboat and and the first note I made on the first page was the consideration for health and safety. So I appreciate you contacting WorkSafe BC, and I'm surprised that they've been doing this for as long as they have without the proper protection, and even before COVID started. So I think I agree with your to wait and get the see if we are successful with the grant. But I'm also wondering about purchasing 3 hazmat suits instead of 2, because we do have the 2 employees and they only don't work together except one day a week. But if there's any damage or tears or leaks or anything, would it be sensible to have an extra set on hand? I don't know how long they'll are expected to last with washing after every use, but depends what they're washed with. If they have to use chemicals and be disinfected or whatever, then it might be a good idea to have a 3rd set available. And I absolutely agree that if we don't get this grant, that we need to find money in our budget to support this.
If I make a comment here, I assume the suits are not one size fits all, though. I would imagine that there's different size levels on the suits. So it might be difficult to, I guess we have to check on how quick we can get one body in. But to have it sit on hand, it may be too big for Mike. And if it's too big for Mike and it fits Tony, does that make it a safety issue for Mike wearing something that's too big for him? So maybe we should check to see the availability, how quick they can be replaced, just to find out that information.
Okay.
Anybody agree or disagree?
Well, and I see when there's only you know, they're going there approximately once a month, it may be able to be replaced, repaired, or whatever in that month. But it was just an idea that I had in case.
No, it's a good idea.
In case. I just have visions of falling out of the rowboat. Oh. Anyway. That was my comment.
Anybody else have a comment? Nope.
I just had a question. Oh, sorry. Norm, you go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Just in our application, do we have an idea on how long it would take to get a response as to whether we awarded the grant? Just kind of ballpark.
Honestly, Councillor Tinsley, I don't know how long it'll take them. I know that there's a lot of them flying around now, and they're probably hugely oversubscribed. But
right.
Yes, I don't know.
I guess to the points raised here, is it possible for us to sort of set a time frame where if we haven't received this grant, we can start taking action and move forward on our own budget? Like as the point has already been made, this is important stuff that we need to get on.
Well, council will be reviewing the financial plan in the next several weeks, and so possibly through that process we may have heard whether or not we've been successful. So council will have an opportunity to maybe bookmark those funds in case. Yes. But you'll see when you see the financial plan at Cal in the next week or so, you'll see that it's already quite subscribed to, but that'll be an opportunity to prioritize expenditures for sure.
Okay, great.
So can I ask a question? If we still have a large amount of grant money available for the COVID grant money that we received, if this is being the huge safety issue that it is, are we better off not maybe getting this completed through that grant money because of COVID? And then if the grant does come in, we can just replace it at that time?
Was that direct? Were you asking me, Mayor Baker?
Yes.
Is that to me? Yes, and I think you were going to look at that staff report later. Are you talking about the 268 strengthening community funds that were given to the community already?
Yes.
Yeah. So yes, I mean that's definitely an option. That fund is the criteria is very broad, and it would certainly encompass this. So we haven't put it in there because this is another funding stream. So if we apply to this one and we don't get it, we will have an opportunity to possibly use some of those surplus 268,000 funds for this expenditure.
I guess my question is if it could take 30 to 60 days before we get an answer, that's 2 more trips to the pond without any equipment.
Oh, I see
So,
what you're saying. Buy it now, and then if we get the money.
then we
yeah,
put it back where
certainly do
is
that.
my suggestion.
I
Does any-
wanted to say that, Councillor Paulson, in response to your suggestion about 3 suits, some of the hazmat suits, and we're going to have to find out which exact one we end up ordering, but some of them are made to order. So they
Okay,
take between 4 to 6 weeks to arrive. So that might be a disadvantage to having a third suit if
Yes,
it's
I understand.
because mobility is so important when they're in the boat. But we will follow up on that as well.
Thank you.
I would like to put a motion in place that we actually use some of the recovery money and get this handled for our public works staff now. And whatever monies does come in the future, we replace it.
So
Yeah.
I could present a resolution that reads something that staff proceed with these expenditures using the previously received, I'm just going to find the wording, the COVID-19 Safe Restart grants for local governments to purchase these items listed in Table 1.
Yes. Does anybody have any objection to that? Or comment?
No, I'll second it.
So you all agree that this is where we should go forward?
Yeah, the way it's written down here and the way you explain it, sounds terrible. What the hell have we been doing the last few years?
Well, it's been a long time.
Yeah,
So Anne, do we have to wait till the next meeting for that resolution, or we can just do it?
No, I'll read out what I'm proposing, and you can play with it if you like the wording. That staff proceed with the acquisitions listed in Table 1, using funds received from the COVID-19 Safe Restart grants for local governments. Using the COVID-19 Safe Restart grants for local governments funding, because we have received that already.
Yes.
Yes. Do we have a first?
I'll first.
Do we have a second?
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Great. There we go. So we can move on that quickly,
Yeah.
as quick as we can.
Excellent. Thank you. The next one, or should I go ahead with the next one?
Please.
The next staff report relates to yet another grant application, the National Disaster Mitigation Program. This was suggested to us from the consultants working on the project to decommission and reconstruct the weir. This is an opportunity to recover the surplus funds that were used to cover the change orders that were approved at the last council meeting for the changes for that project. So it's an opportunity to recover the funds through the National Disaster Mitigation Program grant. That would include returning the $158,513 to general surplus and the $50,000 back into the water surplus funds that were used to cover the cost overruns in the Newcastle Dam project.
So I need a resolution on accepting staff, sorry. Oh, sorry, I thought somebody jumped in there.
I thought we were gonna have some discussion on that.
Okay, on the National Disaster Mitigation Program?
Yeah, on the
Or you refer to
proposal
flooding?
for a recommendation for the dam. I just,
Okay.
when I read through the report, sorry, I just had a few questions about a potential start date. Was that still going to be July?
Well, Councillor Paulson, there's the following staff report, which is specifically on the Northwest Hydraulic Consultants change orders, include a little blurb on their proposed schedule. So I think that would be the subject of the next staff report, your question.
Oh, okay.
Is there
Thank
any
you.
other discussion? No, so recommended resolution that council receive the National Disaster Mitigation Program grant application proposed investments report, and that the Village of Sayward approve application for funding under the National Mitigation Disaster Fund that closes January 11th, 2021. And finally, that the $158,513 be returned to general surplus and $50,000 be returned to the water surplus upon receipt of funds obtained by the way of approving grant application.
I'll make that motion.
First, all in favor? There we go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and the item D, staff report on the Northwest Hydraulics.
Thank you. This staff report relates to the deconstruction of the Newcastle Dam and the construction of the replacement weir. You'll remember the series of weather-related and other delays that led to the cost overrun. Given Northwest Hydraulics protocols, they have a number of formal change orders that require council to sign, and we need a resolution to provide for that. Also in this staff report, you will see that there is a list of proposed activities over the 8 to 9 week time of the project. The earliest it can begin is July 1st because of the potential for fish. And it should be about 8 weeks. There could be a little bit of an extension if it's determined that the condition of the membrane on the cutoff wall has deteriorated, and that might take a little bit more time, another week or two. But generally, we're looking at a 8 or 9 week period starting in July. So hopefully by this time next year, it'll be done.
Anybody have any questions or comments?
Sorry, I have a few questions. I'm just wondering, I see at the bottom that there is a $60,000, no, where was it? A contingency fund of $50,000. Will that be used to cover in several of the descriptions of the work to be done? It says the cost is based on estimate of time and equipment. So if there's an overrun on the time and equipment, and will that be covered under the contingency fund, or will that be, because we don't really know if there's going to be overruns. It's just additional work may be required.
Yeah. And that money was put aside from just in case there is an issue and it doesn't have back and they have the delay going back to council. If the money's not used, we'll just put it back to the water again, but it's just there if necessary. Is that correct, CEO?
Well, my guess on this is that because there were some specific items that council reviewed at a previous, council has gone through these change orders at previous meetings, Councillor Paulson, possibly before you were elected, maybe. Yeah. Yes. But generally what the consultants, I think, have done here is that they've taken the sum of the changes and built in the general contingency that's normal to build into any project, a percentage of the overall cost, just as a protective kind of cushion. And then you'll see also they've added a certain percentage of their engineering costs, which is a sort of a formula thing, I'm guessing, that relates to the percentage of the changes.
Right.
But we don't expect any additional costs on this. And I guess I would say you can see how formal the process is to change the contract. So this just gives them, as Mayor Baker has indicated, 50,000 is a large amount of money, but in the context of the overall project, it's a percentage that's just there as in case something needs to be.
Okay. And the other question that I had relates to the CO number 8 and where the pumps were washed away, and we ended up paying rent on them for several months because they couldn't be retrieved. So my question is about the contractor having insurance to cover some, like these mishaps, if there are any, so that any equipment that's on site and can't be retrieved and returned, would it be up to the contractor to use their insurance, or would we still have to pay for the majority of the cost of that loss?
Well, Councillor Paulson, I honestly, I can't answer that now. I can find out more, but because these are costs that were incurred last year,
Yes.
you know, I'm guessing those discussions happened at the time. I do see that the contractor has offered a bit of a cost savings in this of $4,426.93. I can't answer the question about insurance. I'm assuming they would have looked at that if they had an option, though.
Mm-hmm. So would it be prudent for us when we're renting material or equipment to have insurance on it, so that if something happens to it, are we held accountable for paying for it?
Even if they can't get insurance on that, I think it's been made clear to them, John France mentioned, or we should make clear that any additional issues like what they had with that rental is their responsibility and not ours.
Moving forward, I think that would.
Correct. Moving forward.
Yeah. Or if we're renting the equipment so that they can set it up and use it there, then we need to do diligence and have proper insurance too, so that we're not on the hook for that money. That's just my comment.
No, and I agree, but I believe that any equipment that they need, they're responsible for renting, and the town doesn't rent that equipment for them.
Okay.
Is that correct, CAO?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Mayor?
Is that anything that the contractor rents is generally something that they rent and bring to site. We as a community, we don't rent it for them.
Well, in this case, I think what this cost is related to rental costs that were incurred because the pumps were in the ground longer than we had originally intended.
Right, but
So,
they rented those pumps.
Yeah, this is all rental costs, and
Right.
so that would have been our cost to rent those pumps. And it is an extra cost because they were in the ground longer, I guess.
Yes. So that, did we already do the recommended resolution on that? Nope.
We're still in discussion.
Oh, sorry, still
No.
discussion?
I'm satisfied with the answer for me.
Tom?
No, I'm satisfied with moving forward.
Norm? Okay, Norm's the MLA. Okay, recommended resolution is that we receive Northwest Hydraulic Consultants change order 1-10 and dam deconstruction Weir project. Construction, scheduled report and that council approve the 10 change order date October 31st, 2020 from Northwest Hydraulic regarding the Newcastle Creek raw water supply contract 3003082. Do I have a first?
First.
Do I have a second? All in favor?
All in favor.
All in favor? Okay, so moved. And the next staff report, please, CAO.
Thank you. Again, another application for grant funding. It's Christmas in January.
That's great.
This is the COVID-19 Safe Start grants for local government. Now, this money we have already received. It was based on a formula that's based on population and some other factors. And so it was given to the village in November or December $268,000. This staff report is a list of recommendations that staff are recommending for that money based on the discussion that council had at its December 15th meeting, whereby some of the general items were discussed and staff were given direction to come back in January with a more detailed list of expenditures. So what we've proposed, I'll go through them generally and then maybe leave it for discussion. We're proposing laptops that will enable these remote meetings for council. Not just these meetings, but all meetings could be helpful. We could be emailing the agendas to council. We could provide, a bit more opportunity for council to obtain materials without having to come into the office during these days of COVID. So that is identified as an expenditure of about $6,000. Keyless entry system for the village office and the rec center doors. That's about $2,000. It was recommended that minor renovations to provide some separation for access and egress to the residents using the Kelsey Center would be useful. Plexiglass and better marking. We've got some ideas about what that would look like, and basically to provide for safety of people coming in and out in any kind of a meeting, public meetings, when we use the gymnasium, or people using the center on a regular basis. A public address sound system for mayor and council. We actually just received the estimate for that late Tuesday. It looks like it's going to be around $12,000 or $13,000. It's a system that's very similar to a lot of other local government systems, and it provides for independent mics for each councillor, and a couple of roving mics for the general public who may attend meetings when we're allowed to meet again, and also a sound system. So it can also be packed up and moved into the gym in the event that we have public hearings for various zoning amendments or other things. And it provides for more safety without people using the same mic. It certainly respects the needs of citizens with hearing loss. And it altogether will provide for a much more active participation for members at meetings, and also be a little safer if we have to use the one mic that we pass around, as is currently the practice. The criteria for this grant, as I mentioned, is quite broad, and I'll just read it out from the front page. Addressing revenue shortfalls, facility reopening and operating costs, emergency planning and response costs, bylaw enforcement and protective services, computer and other electronic technology to improve interconnectivity, services for vulnerable persons, and other related costs. So very broad criteria. We checked with the nurse practitioner in town to see what sorts of supports vulnerable people might need, and that would be a person that could help us with that. The suggestion was that we provide grocery delivery to people who need it. She thought there was possibly as many as two dozen people who could be in that position. So this expenditure line item here provides for a driver who could use the van or their own vehicle to pick up groceries in Campbell River and deliver them to citizens who don't have a vehicle. And so they would be, of course, ordering them online, paying for them online, and our person would pick them up and bring them to them. So that would be a great help to people who are vulnerable and who are having trouble. Apparently, there's been a lot of an increase of people buying groceries right here at the corner, which of course is limited, not as fresh, and a bit more expensive, quite a bit more, maybe more expensive. We're proposing some kind of a celebration when this is all over. It's an opportunity for citizens to get together and something maybe, I don't know what Oscar Days looks like, but apparently it's quite popular. Some opportunity for citizens to celebrate the end of the pandemic, and maybe a community gathering with food and music and maybe softball, maybe some old movies on an outdoor screen, that sort of thing, depending when it is. And it could be something that could be helpful to people in the interim, while we, in doing the planning for something that's fun, as opposed to being isolated at home now with, limited opportunity to socialize, it might be a fun thing for people to look forward to sometime in the summer or fall. We've also included $8,000 for a village website redesign. You'll remember that the village already received a $10,000 grant from Rural Dividends BC to redesign the website in partnership with the Tourism Committee and the Sayward Futures Society. But as was pointed out recently, the latter parties may not be ready to go in March. When this was last discussed, they were not. So we're proposing putting $8,000 aside to assist those two agencies in adding a portal to our website at some point, link, which would give a total of $18,000 to develop the new website for the three agencies, which would allow us to proceed right now with ours. A website would be very helpful. We would have a portal for council so that council could access documents, council could access the correspondence. We could have a little bit more information for the public, certainly more user-friendly, more intuitive. If you've looked at any of the recent local government websites lately, you'll see there's a bit of a new style that's in vogue. It's very intuitive, it's visually appealing. Usually they are linking other agencies together so that it's user-friendly for anybody who wants to use the website. They'll be able to readily move around between the three. So that's an $8,000 expenditure, which we would circulate a request for proposals from some specific firms that we know are doing design for local government websites. We're proposing a $5,000 investment in a dedicated workspace at the front of our office for citizens who don't have access to a computer and who need to do things like pay their homeowner grant, for example, which after this year will be a centralized provincially run thing. You won't be able to do it now as you do now when you pay your taxes online. And there, of course, are other things. Now there is computer systems at the library as well. So, this was something that was suggested as being helpful to people who don't have a computer. It might be useful. It's there for you to consider. We generally include about generally a 2.5% increase in taxes. That covers municipal taxes and cover some of the services, which of course are expected to be self-supporting. So there's an option here for council to give some tax relief to residents with a 0% increase in 2021 using some of this funding. And then, of course, the final item is to reserve to transfer the remainder to reserves so that surplus could be used as things come up. We don't know if we're at the end. We all hope we are at the end of COVID. We're all expecting to get the call soon and get vaccinated, but we don't know. And so any remainder would be set aside in order that it could be available if other expenditures related to COVID and needing to strengthen the community in some way emerged. So that's what staff is proposing for the COVID strengthening community money. Thank you.
Okay, so Norm, do you want to speak on this first? Sorry, Norm, can't hear you. You're muted. Okay, well, let's get Tom first.
Somebody hung up on me. About the computers. Up in the rec center in the multi-purpose room, there used to be two computers in there, and I thought there were, I don't know, for the public or whatever. Is that not true? Or?
I don't know how accessible the Kelsey Center is right now, but we'll follow up on that to find out.
Is that the only one you wanted to comment on, Norm?
Yeah.
Okay, Tom, sorry, Councilman Tinsley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The excellent work on all these recommendations. The one, though, that I have some concern about is about the tax relief for residents. I know everyone loves to have, but I don't believe the intent of this is to replace normal budget things with, removing that increase. And these are property owners, and the village has to pay for itself. So I personally, although it is a very broad situation, or the description of the reasons for it, I don't personally see that in there. I actually believe we got a long road to go here, and there's going to be more things that are more related to specifically what this grant's for. That's my thought.
May I comment on that? I'm going to comment on that, Tom. The way that I look at it, because the money is for COVID, and the way that this year has been for a lot of people in the community as well, financially, I think that relief of having no tax increase this year, but there would be, of course, a tax increase, but it would be covered off through this grant. The same thing with any water and sewer. There's a lot of people that are struggling due to COVID. And I think to give an opportunity to where they don't have that extra increase, especially now the new tax assessment has come out, the mill rate is going to go up. I think it's something very important for the community.
Did you want to speak on any other ones, Mayor Baker?
No, you go ahead, Sue. I'll speak to it after.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, Councilman Pulse.
Okay.
It's all good.
Who said that?
That was Siri reacting to your voice.
Well, Siri. Okay, I had a question about the laptops for remote council meetings. And is that estimate of $6,000, is that per year or per month? Or is that just to purchase the 5 laptops?
Yes, Councillor Paulson, that is the cost of the 5 laptops. We've got an estimate, and they range. They come in around $1,000. Some a little more, some a little less, but they're each about $1,000.
So I'm suggesting that we should have some funding in there for maintenance and upkeep. And I know I'm not very good at operating a laptop and often wipe things out and things. So is there a possibility to build some ongoing IT into that expenditure?
Well, we have about $500 for each right now. It's just part of the setup and the support. Okay. For the 5 laptops. So that would be to get them set up and to get you running with them. But I assume you're talking about ongoing problems. We do have a contract with the company who does provide support on an ongoing basis.
Okay. Okay. So that's.
But we could also look at warranties, but you're not looking at manufacturing, you're looking at actually operating, right? It's an operating kind of thing that you're looking for support on.
I'm looking at Luddites like me that wipe out a program pretty quick, and
you're not alone.
Who do I turn to get it back working, up and running?
Is there additional costs with the IT depending on how busy we keep them? Do they charge per call?
You know something that can I answer that when we have our CAL meeting? We talk about all our contracts during the financial plan, because I don't know the answer to that right now.
Sure.
I do agree with the keyless entry systems. I think that for both the village office and Kelsey Center, and I've got some more comments to make about all of Kelsey Center afterwards, so I'll just leave the renovations about the plexiglass. And the public address sound, is there an option to have music like piped into the pool or any with that with purchase, or is that just for microphone system, public address?
Yes, that was basically for the public address sound system. So the mics that would sit on your desk in the county chambers, as well as the public address system.
Okay. And the grocery deliveries for vulnerable residents. I know I worked on a proposal for SRD earlier in about May, I think. And we made a proposal about having this driver and car go into town, and it involves a lot of cleaning and moving the groceries from the, into the residence. And so is this to use the village van for this? Was that the idea?
That was the idea, that they would use the van, yes, and that we would pay them a daily salary. It would probably be a full day, which could include cleaning the van out.
It would have to with COVID, I think. And it may be more like 24 families. That's a lot of groceries. So it may mean more than one trip a month or a week, I mean. So, and I know I talked to the Secret Santa organizer, and she said for some reason, last year they had 35 families that they donated to, and this year it was down to close to 20. So she wasn't sure why there was such a drastic drop in it when things have been so tough for people. So could we talk a little bit more about this at the COW?
Sorry, Ann, we can't hear you.
Oh, sorry. Well, I wasn't sure were you asking me if we can talk about this at the COW? Yes, that would be something we could easily do. We could get into more detail.
And then the community celebration picnic and party. In the recent history of Sayward Futures has been putting on a Canada Day, a big extravaganza, and fireworks and a dinner, a fish dinner supplied, and lots of donations, and the fireworks in the evening, a big cake, games, activities, and the average cost for that is $3,500. So I'm thinking that we could, and that's having entertainment for the kids and live music on site. So I'm wondering about fine tuning that cost. And just off the side, I know Sayward Futures is hoping to be able to do Canada Day celebrations again, which starts at 11 in the morning with the parade, and it goes till 11 o'clock at night with the fireworks. And that's what costs $3,500. Not just the fireworks, but the whole day based on donations. So I'm sure we could find a committee that could handle that.
That's really interesting. The 15 came from the budget that we use for Oscar Days. So,
but Oscar Days is, we don't, we should discuss that further too, because I know Oscar Days baseball teams pay to play in the tournament, and they pay for using the campground and all of that. So money does come into Sayward, but I don't think that the village pays for any part of their parties. They may give a donation in kind, but I think we need to look into that a little bit farther.
Okay.
Is there Any of the other ones that you'd like to comment on, Sue?
I'm sorry, yeah. I like the idea about the website redesign, and we can probably talk more about that at the CAL, if that's possible. And I'm with Tom. I do not agree to give residents any tax relief, because when you look at the municipal portion of being $85 per household, but what does that mean to the taxes that they will incur for 2022? Because they're not going to have, they won't be getting a relief in 2022 as far as I know. So it would just increase their, like they would have to pay that $85 plus the increase on top of it. I mean, somebody has to pay for this. And I think it's fault to the taxpayers.
I think not every year your taxes have to go up either,
No,
depending on what your 5-year plan is and how responsible we're going to be for the next little while as well.
mhm.
So I think it's something we can look at, but I don't, we can discuss that further.
Okay, that would be
Can
great.
I break in here just for a sec? We have to be really careful about the tax. Seems to me, I don't know, in the 2 or 3 years, about a year ago or something, we got painted ourselves into a corner where we did not have any tax increases. And we're kind of heroes for a while. And then when all of a sudden it caught up to us and we had to raise them, and we had to raise them quite a bit, seems to me. So we have to be careful.
Yeah, no, and you know what? I agree. This is not saying that there's not a tax increase to the village. What we're saying is the tax increase gets paid by a portion of that grant. So the village still receives the monies to go ahead with, say, the increase because of what's happening with the garbage pickup, for example. There's an increase per house
Yeah.
on that coming in right now. So that's what I'm referring to. It doesn't take away, and there is no tax increase at all. It just covered off by that grant.
Can I just speak to Norm's point? And oh, sorry. Is that okay?
Yes.
Sure.
I understand the way you're interpreting it, but I believe, like, we're talking about the reality of the individual, right? So the individual taxpayer will feel that they're not paying it, right? And then there will be an increase later, right? That's what we're dealing with. It's the reality of it. And we all want to be responsible and do the right things, but it's about realizing costs always are going up and things come out of the blue, and you can't create, and it happens in many condo corporations where the strata wants to keep the rates low, and then suddenly they haven't budgeted it properly, and now they have to go up dramatically. It just doesn't.
I understand what you're saying, but that's not what I'm suggesting, Tom. What I'm saying is, say hypothetically, there's a 3% increase on municipal taxes, and there's another 7 or 10% or 5% increase on water and sewer. That increase still happens, but that's covered off. Those monies is covered off by that grant. I'm not saying the increase doesn't happen, or we paint ourselves into a corner by not saying there isn't any, we're not covering our costs. All those costs would be covered through the grant, is what I'm referring to.
So the government is paying the taxpayers' bill. That's what you're saying.
We're not the only community. I know that, I mean, the CAO brought this to my attention, and I thought it was a good idea. I know that the SRD has done that this year. Is that not correct, CAO?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the last part of your question.
The SRD has used that to mitigate any tax increase.
I think, I can't remember if it was the SRD or Campbell River, but I think what I pointed out was an article in the Campbell River Mirror that one of those two agencies had used the grant money to provide some relief. I can find out which one it was. I think it was Campbell River though.
So that's, Sorry, go
I
ahead.
I also, this is a payment, one-time payment to homeowners. So in essence, anybody that rents a house or trailer or whatever will not get any benefit, like it's,
That's,
I
May-
can't.
sorry, when a renter rents a place, a house, for example, if there is a tax increase to the homeowner, then that gets put on to the renter. So there is a savings to the renter in that case.
No,
No.
What do you mean, no?
There's
It's not a
rental-
commercial, it's a residential, the rent is the rent and.
No,
yes,
no, no, no.
eventually-
You're not, sorry, you're not understanding what I'm saying. If I own a rental property and all of a sudden my taxes or go up X amount of dollars, well, I'm going to increase the other people's rent to cover that off because I'm not going to lose that, right?
Maybe. if
Potentially.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Potentially.
Well,
when-
only if you're allowed,
when
you're
you're
only
renting
allowed
it-
a certain amount of increase.
Pardon me?
With the
Sorry.
Under the rental agreement, under the Landlord Tenant Act, there's limits to what you can pass on.
But some of the increase would cover, the landlords are not going to cover the cost on their own or lose money on any increases that come through taxes. That is something eventually that'll get passed on to the renter. So there is a savings, or can be a future savings to them, in my opinion.
Can I make a suggestion overall? Obviously, this is one issue and there's a number of things, and I think there's been some excellent work here, but I think we're running on time here a bit. And I'm going to suggest that we do one of two things, is that we consider all the discussion so far on this and then move it forward to the next meeting for further discussion. And then decide on next steps around it. I think there's a number of things in here that everyone's like, no problem, but we can't, the ones that need further discussion, or we need to approach it from a different avenue. Can I make that suggestion?
I agree.
I agree.
Yeah, sounds good to me.
May I just, in terms of what I see here, my concern, I thought the $6,000 was a lot of money for the computers.
Yes.
I think 13,000 is a lot of money for the PA system or for the microphones. So I would like to see some more investigation on that. The $15,000 that are set aside for the gathering, I think if we make it, you were saying, Councilman Paulson, that it was 3,500 for you for Sayward Futures on the event. It could probably be less than the 15, but if we have an opportunity to make it even more spectacular, a greater fireworks and something really extraordinary for the community, I think we could look at spending a little more than 3,500 on that, in my opinion.
Yeah, right.
And also we can look at going to, as it states in here, to WFP for monies and Maui as well. The new website, it would be our website, but there'd just be a portal, if I'm not correct, a portal going in for the other two organizations, and they're responsible for building their own website. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, good. And the $5,000 workspace, the library is supposed to be, there was a grant available to the libraries not so long ago to where they can do computer stations and so on and so forth through the library board. I'm not sure if they took advantage of that or
There is
what they.
there is a computer there available. I don't know if it's open now with the COVID closures, but they do have a computer access at the library. We also have one at Sayward Futures in the gift shop that is connected to internet, and there's also internet access at no charge for the public in Al's room at Sayward Futures. They'd have to have their own laptop or iPad, that sort of thing. But there are other areas available with computer access in the community.
Okay, because one of the things that I thought of is if we do this designated workstation, I mean, everybody in the community needs that access, because as you're talking about the homeowners grant, as well as pulling up the meetings, I completely agree with that. A concern is if we put that in here, we're going to have somebody, I guess, a lot of those people are going to be as computer literate as I am, and they're going to need somebody to be with them. Is that not correct?
Well, there's also the question of who goes to town to get the groceries for the people now that are vulnerable, and who helps people with their internet access if they don't have that computer access. So people are very resourceful. So I
But
know
if it's in,
down at
sorry.
Sayward Futures, we don't have to stand over somebody and help them, like they use the computer to order their fishing licenses and that sort of thing. And very seldom they need help. And then if the help is available, it's given. But most people are pretty efficient on the computers.
Okay. Do you have any comments on that, CEO?
No, I think the suggestion was that we have a dedicated space here for things like taxes and things that people might not want to do in a public setting at the library or that sort of thing. But I think it's definitely worth, if we don't have to spend $5,000 on a workstation, it obviously can go to another better use if there's certain workstations available that are available for people to use.
Okay, so we'll look at that further and we'll find out more information.
Are we under a time frame with that grant, or?
No, we've received the money already. We have some reporting.
Okay.
But
okay, that's
this is
good.
more for direction from council.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've pretty much talked that out. We're going to go through that at a cow, or are we bringing it to the next meeting?
To the cow, I thought.
Okay, just so I could be clear. So our staff report, COVID-19 Safe Restart Grant for local governments, proposed expenditure report, and the council will approve the attached plan for funding provided the village from the COVID-19 Safe Restart. So we're not doing a resolution on that because we're moving that to the next meeting. Do we need a resolution to move that?
Can we just have a motion to receive it and discuss it at the next meeting further?
CAO?
I'm writing that down right now, Mayor Baker, that council receive the proposed expenditures and that council refer discussion on expenditures to the January the 12th COW meeting.
Perfect. Do we have a first?
Thank you.
Second?
That's
All in
second.
favor? All in favor? Excellent. Okay, so this would be, okay, we'll just go to bylaws, which is none as far as I can see. And in terms of new business, this is where I think we should be able to discuss the McMillan flooding. Is that correct, CAO?
Correct.
If you want to give us an update, we've had some meetings and lots of calls. So our CAO is going to update us on what's been happening.
Thank you. So as you know, we've had some heavy rainfalls in the last few weeks. And there's regular flooding behind McMillan Drive, which is supported by a number of culverts and a a drainage system which brings the water off the mountain around the houses on McMillan onto the ball field where it settles out and eventually drains out into the pond and out into the ocean and the river. But what happened last week was a huge volume of water all at once, and it was very, very muddy. There were a lot of sticks and gravel, which led everyone who looked at it to believe that there'd been some kind of a breach up on the mountain somewhere. But we talked to Western Forest, we talked to Island Timber to try and determine if some of their forestry work was, or their harvesting practices were leading to this. And they were very quick to agree to send out their area planner and to look at, to go up there and find out what could have happened. But we haven't heard a report yet. We also followed up with Highland Engineering, who did the master drainage plan for the village in the year 2000. They had a number of recommendations, which I'm guessing due to funding, were not implemented in 2000. They basically included enlarging some of the culverts as well as some general maintenance and some crash guards and things like that. But well, we met with Highland Engineering this morning, Mayor Baker, myself, and Tony, and a fellow named Stuart, who is taking over from Stephen Richardson, who is getting ready to retire. He's done a lot of the engineering work in the village for, I think, since McMillan Blodell maybe was here. I'm not sure about that, but he made reference to a superintendent, so I'm guessing he's got a fair bit of experience with the village, was very familiar with the report and the situation, remembered having done some work on it from 20 years ago, and then did a tour of the sites with Tony this morning, and then agreed to give it some thought and come up with a strategy. He did indicate to us that he thought that the fix would be bigger than what was proposed in the 2000 report, maybe a more substantial culvert higher up that could run along the top contour lines, which would collect the water sooner and direct it away from the village before it ever gets to McMillan. We're expecting a pretty big bill with that. Even the work that was proposed in 2000 in today's dollars was probably close to 400,000. So if it's something more significant, we'll obviously be looking at trying to come up with some strategies and grant money, and we'll also be looking at working with the two forestry companies to see if there is something that they can, assign themselves some responsibility for with respect to any practices that might have been compromised by the heavy rain and, through no fault of their own, may have contributed to the flooding on McMillan. They might be able to determine that they have a role, and hopefully, if that's the case, might assist in some of the fix. We are meeting with Western Forest Products next week, myself, Mayor Baker, as well as the CFO and a couple of their staff at Western Forest, and they initiated the call. They wanted to give us an overview of their 2021 works, and we're hoping at that time that I've sent all the pictures that we collected over the last week to Western Forest, and I'm hoping that by that time they will have had an opportunity to determine if they have a role here and to what extent they might see themselves as being partially culpable. Whether or not they are, I don't know. We'll wait to hear from them, but we're hoping that they're going to be able to support any role that they have in this more recent flooding, and hopefully come up with some strategies for a more permanent fix. It's certainly not going to get any better in the future. We're seeing more storm surging. We're seeing, as there's more and more harvesting going on in the mountains, there's going to be more and more erosion. And so it does sound like it's not going to be a problem that fixes itself. And I think that's the sum of it. Now, over the past week, I also want to point out that our staff from Public Works have been working almost around the clock. One thing I wasn't aware of is when we have this kind of flooding, even though the ballpark is designed to accommodate the water and hold it until it drains away. Of course, there were king tides as well that made it harder for the water to get out. But there's 4 lift stations around the village, and those lift stations have to be pumped out when we have that kind of water because the ground's just saturated. It can't accommodate the flows. So what I just want to give a shout out to our staff. Tony was out well into the late hours of the night on our last storm, dragging around the 1 generator that we have to go to each of the 4 lift stations to try and make sure they were all functioning. So we will be coming forward back to council to try and obtain some direction on obtaining funding to recover extra generators that are permanently fixed with each of the 4 lift stations so that staff aren't out there. I know during the 4-day power outage a few days ago, Tony and Mike were out every 4 hours pumping those lift stations for the 4 days. So, you know, I think we need to put some time and effort into protecting our staff and protecting our infrastructure. And unfortunately, the cost for that is about $120,000. So, you know, I'm sorry to be bringing you all these bad news numbers tonight, but there are some, you know, there is some infrastructure that seems relatively critical and things that aren't going to get any better. And in order to look after our staff who carry out this work in the dark, windy, stormy nights that everybody's cozy in their bedrooms. So that's something that I think should be thought of too. And this, you know, it's a very important thing for us to take on is the flooding on McMillan and the impact it has in the whole village, really.
Has there been anybody looking into whether or not there's any grants available to get the generators?
We will be doing that. I just found out about this when I saw Tony driving by my house at the late hours in the night with dragging a generator. So, you know, it's probably something that's been looked at in the past, but because of the expense, and you know, and it also might be that there's just more water coming down. We're seeing more storm surging. All infrastructure, all local governments are seeing their infrastructure and the engineering design standards are having to be reviewed because the volumes of water are increasing from storm surging. So it could have been, it might be emerging as a more of an issue now than it was before.
Because I know I think it's a year or 2 ago that the village was looking at getting those generators in place. I'm not sure of all the details on that, but obviously that's going to be looked into. So anybody else have any comments?
I have a comment, of course. I just want to acknowledge the huge amount of work that Anne or the CAO has done on this in short order, the amount of people that she contacted and has set things in motion, as well as the public works, because I don't think most of the village appreciates how much they do. And in a small village, small municipality like ours, there's only so many people in public works and give it their all. And I was also so impressed with the person that called me to come and look at the flooding on Sunday. And she was calm and cool and not blaming or accusing or any of that. But when I got there, there was a whole village of people putting the sandbags in place. And I think it's just incredible how everybody works together when the chips are down. And those sandbags were heavy, and some of the young women that were moving them were getting a real workout, but everybody worked together to prevent any damage to any of the homes or anything. But I really appreciate that people do take the effort to call out and ask for help. But I really want the staff to know that what they do for this village is above and beyond, and nobody really knows the extent of the work that they do. And I'd really like to send out a thank you to them for their efforts.
And also thank you to Sue, our councilwoman Sue Paulson, for going out there and doing the sandbags as well.
Well,
So thank you. So, any other new business? Great. Now, public question period. Do we have any questions in relation to this number 15 here? CAO?
No, we received the two letters that council has seen that could be answered by staff or researched and provided some information to council to respond. But no items that were related to the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you. So
Thank you.
we're going to prepare to go into camera. That in accordance to section 92 of the community charter, this council meeting will be closed to the public at this time. So the recording will stop and give considerations to matter in accordance with section 90-1-C of the community charter and discuss labor relations, community charter to address acquisitions, deposits, I can't even speak anymore, explorations, land improvements, and so on and so forth. So recommendation for the meeting to be adjourned.
So moved.
I
So
second it.
we'll reconvene in 10 minutes for the in-camera.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.